in addition to the thousands of pages of Epstein documents to go through this past week, there's also the 96 pages of the South African accusation that Israel's committing war crimes. And again, because like let me show you a little book. Hold on. Let's go to the book camp. Let's go here. This is my placeholder while I look for the book Palestine's Laboratory. It's a good book. Let's see. We're not looking for this one. Not looking for this one. Where is it? I got a lot of books over here. Man, I specifically have one about South Africa's role with Israel. But I got too many books on this on my desk. So they have a long history. I know it has like their flags on the cover too. So I'm gonna have to go through the stack. I had it on a couple weeks ago. Yeah. So if you pay attention on the show, you're not missing anything. You're just missing anything if you just tuned in. All right. So that relationship having been previously established with not only literature, but documentary footage of them saying, we like South Africa.
And we did show a documentary, yeah.
Right. At a time when no one else will help out South Africa because apartheid was kind of like gauche at that point. And they're like, you got, for them to be accusing Israel, it's like such a turnabout. And I was interested to see like, what's the nature of these accusations? Is there evidence? Do these arguments hold water? Is this much ado about nothing? Or is there something here? And South Africa actually took a leadership position and called out their partner for not fair play. So we're going to go to these three clips. Israel accused of genocide. This is going to come from the Hill. So we want to get like some milk toasty normie, like this is what they're saying about it. Then we're going to go to South Africa, charges Israel with genocide. That's Kim Iverson. She's actually going to give you an analytical. She's going through the report. That's where all the juicy stuff is. We'll let the Hill provide like the opening show context type of thing. And then a quick part of the Young Turks coverage of this, because they're actually one of the few places that we cover such a story. So like I said, every now and then, broken clock's going to be right. And I have no aversion to their being right. Like when they're
I don't care who's
truth,
reporting on it.
I agree with them.
Yeah, exactly.
And when they're not talking about the truth, I don't agree with them.
And that's a logical mind.
I'm using evidence and that which exists that can be proven and shared and communicated to others. That's called education.
Yeah, take the evidence from wherever it comes at this point.
Yeah, pretty much from wherever it comes, because it's not coming very consistently through the pipes that used to bring us
barely getting any decent quality evidence anymore. And so much of it can be
almost like that news plumbing was put in there to deliver not truth to us.
It's narrative control.
Like that. Yeah.
So it's like more of a dark art.
Pretty much. Well, let's shed some light on their dark arts. Let's go first to the Hill, and then we'll get into it, because these accusations, this is a turning point in this war and in history, because aggression of this type left unchecked only gets uglier and brings everybody down. So let's check it out.
If the idea is that the tunnels are underneath anyway and the bombs don't do anything to them, and they find them intact, but they seemingly find them intact afterwards.
We know that they didn't bomb the hospital. We know that that was an errant rocket.
Which hospital? Because there's many hospitals.
Hospital where 500 people were killed in the parking lot. That was a false story that was circulated by Hamas and by the Palestinian
What about
Authority
the Indonesian hospital or Al Shifa hospital or Nasser hospital, all of those ones?
Doctors Without Borders has become part of Hamas, and they speak for Hamas, and they protect Hamas, and they cover for Hamas.
You said the same about the United Nations and UNESCO.
I turned away for a minute looking at some of these books, and all of a sudden it seemed like we were playing Epstein client list clip. What was Dershowitz doing? What happened there, Tony? Is he involved in this other thing too?
It's interesting. Alan Dershowitz.
That he would show up twice like that.
He was interviewed by Kim Iverson like 6 months ago, where she asked him a series of very tough questions. I think the relationship of Epstein to Mossad was one of the questions, relationship to himself and Epstein, and he just stormed off, if I remember correctly. And she actually ended up doing a follow-up episode sort of describing the experience, because it was so sort of even novel for someone like her as a journalist and reporter. So I thought that was interesting. So he obviously has a lot, has shown over the past 6 months, 8 months, whenever that occurred, emotional reactions. So him doing the sort of media tour at the same time, contemporaneous with the Epstein client list revelations, is
Yeah, I
well,
mean,
I
it's
can't
just
say it looks too good for him.
isn't it ironic?
Yeah,
Don't you think?
yeah.
All right, here's a book shot here.
Nature's
We're not
dirty,
going to look at this. We got to zoom
dark
out.
wink.
Zoom out. Zoom out. All right, we're not looking for that. We were looking before the break, before that last clip. Nope, that's not it. This one. Look at this. Unspoken Alliance. Israel's secret relationship with apartheid South Africa. This is a fascinating little book. And let me split screen here for you. If we were to look up maybe like, I mean, I did note in here that it's ironic that Rothschild had funded Cecil Rhodes to set up South Africa, and then the British and French Rothschilds had set up Israel. But that's not what we were doing here. We're looking up the nuclear program. Oh, nuclear weapons. Israel. Development. There's a lot of pages in here about supplying nuclear weapons to South Africa.
Yeah, that's
You
a good
know,
point.
you don't share your nuclear weapons with too many people. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know how many countries do you think Israel has shared nuclear weapons with, Tony? So for your nuclear weapons partner to accuse you of genocide, I'm saying this is a big deal. Like, people don't understand what this means, that South Africa would come out and take a position like this. I mean, it's
So I mean,
well,
I've
it's still a developing situation. Maybe
Yeah, I
they'll come
mean,
back and be like, sorry, just joking. You know,
the only hang up I have with the allegations, and I have no context beyond this, is that I do know there is currently, argued to be a sort of, I don't call it a soft genocide, but genocide going on in South Africa currently, where the Black National Congress has been killing the sort of white farmers in the outskirts. That's been something that's pretty well documented in the alternative media. And so this is coming from the Black National Congress. They themselves are, guilty of appropriation of land and, extreme socialist measures, extreme violence against, the outskirts, and people do much of the work in regards to the farming and food infrastructure. So I don't know if it's coming from that. I don't know what the source of this is necessarily. I know it's coming from South Africa in general, but I don't know what faction or particular segment of it. But it could turn out, depending on who it's coming from, to backfire. If Israel's clever, they could very much turn this on them somewhat easily. So they have to be careful. They first of all, where it's coming from within the political structure of South Africa. They worded it brilliantly, presented the facts brilliantly. So I'm hoping it can gain some merit. It just really needs one for another nation to give it backing of, a Western nation of some sort to break ranks. And I think then it will gain some life. Right now, because of the dubious situation around South Africa itself, even in the current state, it could be turned against them. So I'm curious to see which way this goes. And I hope it goes in the case of more support for what they're claiming, because that's where the evidence is obviously most sufficient.
yeah, I think maybe it's an opportunity in history for a real life Mandela effect. And here's what I mean by this.
Yeah.
Mandela, they were protesting, like Steve Biko creates the Black consciousness movement, and that grows up, has influence over Mandela. They put him in prison, and apartheid was finally ended because his party had to take up violence and started committing terroristic acts against their oppressor, or, acts of rebellion that were classified by the oppressor apartheid government as acts of terrorism.
All right.
Using violence as a way to get your political aims is the Oxford English Dictionary definition of terrorism. It's government by coercion. That's how the book has it. I don't know what they changed it in the wokeness age, but that's how traditionally it was defined. Mandela had to take up arms against his oppressor for South Africa to become its own state, free of the British Empire, I might add. Now let's go back to 1947, King David Hotel bombing, where British colonization project. Irgun Haganah has to participate in the bombing and killing of civilians as well as military targets on both sides. They were willing to kill some of their own people too, to achieve the end justifies those means, I guess, as the story goes. I think that might be a Ben Gurion quote. No, I'm not too sure. We'll hear about that later. So there's a certain history of the violence has to happen to get your state. What if, since the violence has already happened on October 7th, how about you just slice them off, little Palestinian state there, and be done with it? Because from my historical recollection, the United Nations sets up some borders. And up to 1967, there's these borders. But with the Yom Kippur War, 1973, which was the 50th anniversary, this 10-7 event, right? That war took a slice of land from Jordan and took a slice of land from Egypt, that being the occupied West Bank and the Gaza Strip. Now, these two pieces of land that were acquired through military action in 1973 have been held prisoner. So they just literally took some people from another country, made them prisoners, and said, now you're in our country. That's how these people that are being covered in the news for the past 2 months ended up being in this situation. They had nothing to do with any of the line drawing or any of the apartheid system that they've been living under. And if you want evidence of that, we have hours and hours and hours and hours of evidence that we've presented over the past 2 months. This is what this show does. It takes these pieces of evidence and puts them into an entertaining format. And if you watch it over time, you can see what's actually going on outside of what they're telling you on the news. So if you don't want to have those fragmented views, you got to see what these people are up to. What they're doing presently is calling what Israel's doing a genocide. And like I said, this is their super secret best friend partner that they share nuclear weapons development programs. This is where Klaus Schwab's dad helped through the Edelweiss Corporation to provide South Africa with nuclear weapons. Go check out some Johnny Vedmore articles on Klaus Schwab, and all the research is there. So there's a World Economic Forum layer to this, globalist aspect to it, because we had a title, Welcome to Planet Gaza. What they're doing to the Gazans is what they want to do to everybody else on this planet. So we should learn from history before we become victims of it. Thus endeth the rant.
It is interesting. Sorry. To back up actually what you're saying, I'm going to pull this out from Whitney Webb, exactly to what you're saying, and actually involves the British. Huh,
no
what
way.
A surprise.
No way.
We're talking about BCCI and these the TOW missiles. The use of suspect invoice techniques, such as classifying tow missiles as lift trucks, seemed to be a habit of Michael Aspen's. In the early 1980s, he was working closely with a British arms dealer named Leonard Hammond, who also manufactured machine gun parts through his company, Delta Engineering. Hammond and Aspen used Delta Engineering to move machine guns to the Middle East and Africa, with a particular focus on South Africa. By 1981, they were moving arms to Iran. Frequently, these arms flows were mislabeled on invoices as "quote-unquote" hydraulic lifting tools. Aspen and Hammond had a particularly close relationship with Kuhne and Nagel, a large German freight and logistics company. When the arms dealers moved 1,000 rifles to South Africa in 1980, invoiced as quote high-lift hydraulic machinery spares, unquote, K&N subsidiary Air Cargo handled the freight. In 1981, K&N worked with Aspen and Hammond in moving weapons destined for Iran. K&N, according to Aspen, played a role in the very similar to that which BCCI would later play in moving tow missiles in 1984. So it just shows the intimate connection between arms dealers moving arms in the 70s and 80s to South Africa, and obviously throughout the Middle East as well. So
now, what would Destiny and the Krasenstein brothers think of that? Do they read books, those guys? Because that's the other thing.
And let's see where this comes from. Let's do the little extra here. Unusual behavior by Derek.
It's like they heard the Bill Hicks joke about, we got ourselves a reader here. And they thought it was a bad thing to be a reader because they don't want to be made fun of in a diner. I think that's how they took it.
Certainly took it.
Take it.
Take it.
They did. If you watch that debate, they took it pretty good.
So,
what do you got up there, Tony?
Come on, man.
I was just looking at the reference for that, but it was from a. It was actually
Let's go, Brandon.
Magazine. Anyways, So this to back up your point. I mean, that's certainly. She also makes the point that much of the nuclear trading, much of the secrets really were facilitated by, what was it? It was either Mossad or British intelligence manipulating American sort of weapons manufacturers and American sort of
They're like a
politicians.
right hand and a left hand. They're connected to the same body.
There's a number of claims she makes in the book that are very interesting in regards to that, in regards to the nuclear secret trading, especially chapter 7 in the first volume, BCCI. A lot of arms. It wasn't just we're giving you arms. We're also trading secrets of how to build very sophisticated arms. For example, one of the claims she makes is how a BCCI subsidiary is able to finance what was called the something Buddha, the laughing Buddha, or something like that, which is India's first atomic program, and that was in like the late 1970s or something like that, and that obviously spread to Iran and all over the place. So that was funneled through, actually, if I remember correctly, the claim was either British or Mossad, and so they were manipulating the U.S. government into getting special information out of in regards to building more sophisticated missile systems. And
that sounds conspiratorial, Tony. I don't see how they can manipulate anybody in our government. Oh wait, what was that Epstein story about? Oh yeah. Yeah. Right. Roy Cohn. What was going on at the Plaza Hotel? Like, they've been filming people in hotel rooms for decades and decades.
Yeah, I mean, that's an old KGB sort of. I mean, Mossad's been doing it, the KGB. I mean, it's I'm sure the CIA. I mean,
Operation Midnight Climax. What do you think that was?
Exactly.
What do you think they ran that they didn't write down in fucking papers for you guys to read about later? What do you think? Like, these other people were like, oh, well, if there's no documents, they must not have done it. Well, maybe they didn't write everything down. You think, Bill, do you think Slick Willie Clinton, when he's slipping out of Secret Service protection, you think he's really signing his name on the logs to go onto the island and stuff like that? Hey, let me just tell you, these people have an idea. They go get on the jet. They go do it. There's no signing. They're above the bureaucracy. Correct. Okay. They're the reason this is going on is because they thus far are untouchable.
And one of the things that hasn't been mentioned, you're exactly
Unlike
right.
Their victims.
And to bolster it, tragically, but to bolster your point also, like, that was not mentioned earlier. It hasn't mentioned many times by many of the producers that we frequent on the show. But Luke earlier and Kim, they're or not Kim, but some of the other people we played. There's this sort of, oh shoot, I lost my train of thought. Because there's a misconception in the way it's sort of some of the
Here, while you get your thought, let me just say it like this. Back during the Iron Curtain, right? There's communism. You can't go over there. It's all cut off. They'll give their right arm for some blue jeans smuggled in from the West. Oh my goodness, you've got gum or something like that. They'll go crazy for that, right? So they are very cut off, very isolated. No Western contact was allowed for their little experiment. Except Armand Hammer and Nelson Rockefeller and those guys fly in and out of Moscow as they please. They give Joe Stalin orders from the top down. If you want to keep doing your communist thing, you're going to listen to us and take orders from us. Just like Nelly Rock and his predecessors had helped to set up the Nazi regime. Like these are the facts of history.
Exactly. And I conveniently remember my point now. It was actually in regards to Tucker talking to his brother, and his brother conveniently sort of, forgetting some of those facts. It's
Epstein's brother, because his
Mark Middleton. Like,
they had the attorney in common. Remember, there was like Bill Gates, Epstein's brother. There was like this whole
Bill Gates bought. We found out this is crazy, but it was actually through Senna, which I need to get in contact with her. But because we haven't talked in a while. But so when we were going over the book club, it was a situation where we're going over all these various airlines that had been part of BCCI that then just either went through different hands who owned them. This let them sort of just sit there. And all of a sudden, one of the airlines, I forget, it was called like the Polar Express, something strange, was bought by Bill Gates. And so Bill Gates bought a airline that was used in BCCI, then used by Jeffrey Epstein, and now he owns it. I'm just like, the continuity is sort of, it's uncanny and beyond coincidental. Another consideration I wanted to point out earlier is Mark Middleton. So, like, it's not just Jeffrey Epstein has been, quote unquote, suicided. It's what Luke Brunel, Mark Middleton, and a coterie of individuals that have been conveniently silenced. Remember, Mark Middleton was the one who I think 7 or 17 times was the one who not only he didn't introduce, but let Epstein in. I think he did introduce and actually let Epstein into Clinton's White House. He was essentially the liaison between Clinton and the White House in the early years. And he ends up dead at Heifer Ranch, 30 or 45 minutes from his home, with electrical cord around his neck and a shotgun wound through his chest. Very oddly enough, so it's like, and obviously Luke Brunel. So there's Jean-Luc Brunel. So there's a whole curious continuity of individuals that went missing that only add to the enigma surrounding it. So it's, yes, Epstein is a massive enigma, but there's also other individuals closely tied to it have also been conveniently suicided that had very convenient information. Obviously, like for example, Mark Middleton.
International Airlines. I was looking for the airline that was associated with
Skyways
BCCI,
International Airlines. That might be it. In fact, let me look it up.
Here's what I mapped it as. It was BCCI, the Bin Mahfouz group, and it involves like Bin Laden. This goes back to like 9/11. Only it happened during Iran-Contra. How about that? Yeah. And then it went to Prince Al Saud 727 being owned by Skyways, Boeing, right here. See, I studied this once upon a time. This is not new territory.
Yeah, what's interesting, and she does a good job in chapter 7 and 8. Here's the United Jewish Appeal. These that's talking about the
I'll share your screen. What are you watching? What do you got?
Oh, that's talking about the early Irgun and the use of the El Al Airlines as a sort of early sort of proto-Mossad smuggling operation during the late 1940s. She gets into extensive detail because Wexner is actually connected to that intimately. Now it's back to CIA-linked airlines in the 1980s. Oh, it's all connected, she's saying. No fucking way. Well, I got to go through this again. I forgot this detail.
Once you start learning, there's more to learn than to do. That seems to be
crazy.
Yeah. A lot of times that is the case. All right. So Skyways Airlines aside, this whole overlap between British infiltration of the U.S.
Southern Air Transport.
Southern Air Transport. Well, that was also used in Air America. That's drug trafficking, Vietnam, Operation Phoenix, all the good times back then.
Yeah.
But the overlap between the people that created both these brands of apartheid and their successful conquest in using our intelligence community to do a lot of their heavy lifting. I mean, it is a sad story because when I see those Palestinian kids and they don't have shampoo and they don't have medicine and heat and food and water and all these things, they didn't do anything. They had nothing to do with any of this history that I had to learn to get this far in the game. And it's just only because so many people see the hijacker as the legitimate pilot. And they're like, it's okay if he suppresses the people in the plane. Is that a bad metaphor? I know 10/7 was their 9/11, so I'm sensitive to not using the box cutter metaphor.
Well, there's a sophisticated propaganda to make sure there's no humanization, especially on the Israeli side for the Israeli population of the Palestinian plight. So there's been a very sophisticated multi-generational dehumanization. Obviously, we saw that through the documentary by Yoav Shamir in regards to
defamation. It's called, it's defamation. Yeah. You should look that up. It's on Odyssey. Defamation.
And we've referenced that a number of times, and we showed it because it's just too powerful not to show. Like, it's multi-generational instantiated hate over, over many generations. Instantiated hate over multiple generations as well.
Well, if you show that to Destiny and the Krasensteins, what do you think they'd get from it?
Depends if they're willing to listen or if they're just going to troll about it. Because it's, as Gino Denning told me, my mentor, with the Trivium.
Troll's going to troll, dude.
Early on, when you approach someone, you're going to find out pretty quickly if they're on a pathway to truth or they're just there to have an argument, just there to put on what they call a debate, but it's really just entertainment. And that's what he didn't say it that way. I'm adding a little flair to it. But
I see it as mocking the truth by not being interested in it.
Yeah, it's a mocking.
That's what willingly ignorant is.
Yeah, that's stuff. Yeah, very well said. I agree 100%. That's very well said.
Willingly ignorant. Where do they rank on the stupidity quadrants? Let me see. Yeah, I don't really want to be around those people.
Italian economics.
But I'm not calling for their genocide.
Exactly.
Okay. I don't want those people in my life, but I'm not calling for a genocide.
Exactly.
So this a little bit different. See, it's a big world. You don't like what's going on there, maybe like move. Instead of forcing other people to move. I don't know.
And then the other
Bombing them out of their houses. What do you call it when you bomb people out of their houses? There used to be a word associated with
colonialization, genocide.
I'm thinking Mr. Clean. Oh, ethnic cleansing. There you go.
That's certainly ethnic
I knew it was
cleansing.
one of those commercials I used to see as a kid. Yeah. Oh, okay. So we got another media block. We're pretty much through South African accusations of genocide against Israel, which is a very specific term. See, I would have opted for ethnic cleansing because it's much more easily defended.
Yeah, if genocide has to do with a nation as part of its essential definition, then yeah, not to get all logical here, what makes an essential definition, but you're right. Actually, ethnic cleansing might have been a better choice of term to use, but they did a good job. Like they did frame the evidence pretty significantly, particularly the historical evidence in regards to. Now, I'm not talking about evidence just beyond. I'm not prior to 1948, but just like the transgressions that have occurred post the supposed ratification, which the Arabs denied. That was we covered that many weeks ago. But anyways, that's sort of part
I think
that's one thing Kim was sort of alluding to. Is this
here's our options. It's like a multiple choice test, right? So we have like self-defense, genocide, ethnic cleansing, Palestinian Holodomor.
Yep.
Even if all answers are right, answer like letter A doesn't
all
make
answers
B,
are evil.
C, and D.
There's an underlying common denominator, and that's evil. So can make it real simple for people. It's just human evil. Is what's being perpetrated against innocent individuals, with a propped up narrative that has more holes than. I don't even want to use that analogy.
So you're saying that the mainstream media is literally broadcasting live evil.
Yes.
I'm very Da Vinci-ish of them.
I mean,
the only two people
all the time, but at this point, I mean, it's pretty plain to call what is objective based on the evidence in front of me. Well,
Yeah, the only two people I know in history that write things backwards were Da Vinci and Helene de Rothschild. Guy de Rothschild's wife that had that party back in the 70s.
That's right.
Those invitations are written so you had to read them in a mirror.
Yeah.
So the live evil, because evil
inverted
is
reflection.
live spelled. Yeah, that's my point. Thank you for making it obvious. Tony, just in case like there was some newbie watching. Yeah.
Wow.
Some probie.
What makes the Grand Theft World podcast unique, invigorating, exciting, and informative? Most other podcasts out there are either doing straight up interviews or they're just covering the daily news. They're covering current events from the day they happened. And that is effective. It's useful. It's a great starting point. And then sometimes these current events change during the week past the first story. So we like to give it a little time. You have to wait till some of the dust settles on these stories in order to give them accurate coverage. And the other thing that's really missing in the media landscape is covering the articles that are coming out every day. That's great. That's necessary. But who's bringing in contextual history so that you can understand what has been going on for decades and decades to lead up to the machinations and actions that we see unfolding today? So what we do here on the podcast is we cover current events. Many of these things are censored, but we wait about a week. As a forensic historian, I focused mainly through my career on the history of globalism and collectivism and things that they call maybe the New World Order. There's a lot of facts to these sort of circumstances, groups, events, activities, working groups that they've had over time. So for Grand Theft World listeners, we not only break down the current events, most of which that are censored during the week, we provide you with contextual history, we give you the source notes, the references, we do deep dives, and this really empowers you with an understanding of context and history so that you can make more informed decisions in your life. There's also a community, a membership where you guys can actually ask questions and we can get into the show and we can share evidence. And there's a town hall weekly for Grand Theft World for those who listen to it and are interested in covering the stories that we don't get to during a 6-hour show. Listening to it an hour a day, you could easily consume the week's news, but you're going to have substance and meaning and context and understanding. And with that, you can make higher quality decisions in your life. So if you're interested in more quality in your life, go to grandtheftworld.com, click podcast at the top, and we'll see you there. Thank you.
These allegations are false.
This isn't Grand Theft Auto, folks. This isn't a video game.
What are the most surprising things that you discovered once you started pulling on that thread? Who he was connected to, what institutions he was influential over, what events he participated in?
Come on, man. What are we talking about? Come on, man. No.
You don't have to think about it, dude.
I got this quote because you said you didn't know much about Klaus Schwab. I made it my job to, as soon as this happened, I'm like, okay, this guy's their front man. Let me learn about the official history of the World Economic Forum. I got their 40-year history. I got every book that Klaus Schwab has written or ghostwritten. I went through those books. This is one of the most interesting passages.
Come on, man. Come